Hello everyone, welcome to our backyard TED Talk. To start asking these questions, why does Santa come down the chimney? Who is Santa? Why is he from the North Pole? What do the reindeers have to do with anything? And all of these little clues bring us to a certain time and place. And while it's impossible to ever go back in time and ask any people from their firsthand accounts how this all happened, we can use dates. And we can use science and this freedom and this ability to do research to find out most realistically, how did these ideas come to us? What were the things happening at the time? What were the inventions? What was the context of the stories? And really it's all about the sun. And we don't realize it, but as a majorly Christian society in the West, a lot of our beginnings stem from these cultures that we now call pagan, but they basically just mean non-Christian societies. Before Christianity, most societies around the world, they have some way to track the sun. Through science, we understand that our hormones are in a better rhythm and we're more healthy when we do follow that sun pattern. And so any creature around the world has some magnetism with it, some comfort with it. And we've been tracking that sun since as long as we can remember in this cycle. And we are connected with the sun, we're connected with the stars. We talk about you're part of that magic because we are all part of that stardust. We're all part of that energy. And different religions will look up to the stars and see something different. But you could see as far back as you can go, people were tracking the sun and the moon and the stars and trying to figure out their story within it. And every winter, there is this moment where the sun has the longest cold night of the year in this northern hemisphere. The longest cold night. It was a harsh time of year. It was really hard on people. And so they found a way to celebrate this night that was the longest of all, but it was actually this battle where the sun wins. And from Egypt to Babylonian times, as far back as we have in recorded his story, this history as this beautiful night where the sun is starting to win after this night. And so that is what the solstice is all about. Today it is on December 21st. However, in the older calendar, the Julian calendar, it used to be on December 25th. But this day, December 25th, has been used in imagery for all different religions about a resurrection of the sun that came up over and over again in this natural cycle, and it has shown itself into our modern religions. These native cultures that actually have inspired the modern Santa. And in the West, we're a Christian society, and you know that because you can look at the date, right? We are the year 2023 this year. That is 2023 years since the birth of Christ.
What year is it? Because we're counting to it in unison as a species. For thousands of years we've been going 1, 2. But my kids, they're living in the world and there's a lot of religion in the world, so you do have to teach your kids, if you're not raising them religiously, you do have to teach them about religion. The Christians won. They're the winners. A long time ago. Everybody's scientists, historians. Jesus plus 2. Jesus plus 3. How is that not a complete win? That's not a Monday off in October. So I don't know what to tell my kids.
So we've said it's the year 2023. Exactly 200 years ago, there was an anonymous writer that submitted a poem called "'Twas the Night Before Christmas Time." It was the first time we see in print a modern version of Santa with reindeer. And we've recreated that poem, that cadence, into this version that says the natural origin. In the early 1800s was when the story about these native cultures started to arrive in the American consciousness. So we have Santa starting to form in America. We have explorations into Siberia, and that's where this thread starts to get really interesting. Because we see in 1891, this Trans-Siberian Railroad starts breaking down. So that's towards the end of the 1800s, but it took over 100 years of expeditions to start tracking out to these locations and bring stories back. And what do we see there? And this is where that nobody can tell us a better explanation of why Santa would come down a chimney or why there's reindeer or snow or presents under a tree. And this is where you can see some of the symbolism from these native communities. So the beautiful thing is you no longer feel like you're telling a lie as you perpetuate this idea of Santa, because you find these cultures that wear red and white garbs, the outfits, and they would wear bells that would jingle loud on the sleds so that they could be heard in the snow. They dress up like their favorite red and white spotted mushrooms that grow under pine tree like presents. The reindeer that they love and depend on and revere so much, they absolutely adore these mushrooms. They are the hunters of these mushrooms.
In the Arctic Circle, this fungus also has magical associations with animals and is a favorite food of reindeer. For thousands of years, the lives of reindeer and Sami people have been entwined. Fly agaric was important to both of them. Reindeer seek out the mushrooms, even under an early fall of snow. No one knows whether the reindeer are affected, but in the past, Sami shamans took fly agaric in their visionary rituals.
And they would knock the Russian Siberian soldiers over to get to their pee when they were watching the Siberian shaman in these huts, because the reindeer knew that if you drank the pee of someone who ate the mushrooms, you would get the same psychedelic effects. And these reindeer would start jumping around and look like they were flying. And then for the people that were on mushroom, it gives you this sense of flying as well. And there was this idea of a gift of telling stories, telling visions. There were these shaman who could be the shadow version of Santa, basically who helped people either have an experience, a guided experience, or they would be the ones having the experience to visit with ancient ancestors and bring back stories. And so you start to see the gifts are the mushrooms themselves or the stories that were brought back or the experience. Santa shaman is important because it means there was someone who had a set and setting for using the mushrooms. It was someone who spent their whole life and generation to understand how the mushroom worked, knew where to find them, knew how to get the toxins removed. There's this very intentional use of the mushroom that these shaman would do. And then you would see the toxins could be removed several different ways, but one of them was hanging them to dry over the fire. Their yurts had this one opening in the top. It was their chimney. And if the doors were blocked by snow to get into their homes, they would have to put up a big log, climb up to the top, and jump in through the chimney hole. So we have pine trees that grow in a very specific place. We have reindeer that live in a very specific place. We have this idea of the North Pole, this lore that was kind of this expansion that was happening at the time in the 1800s. We were trying to get to this North Pole. So all of this imagery is really important. And then you get to the mushroom itself. And so I have to give a little thread on why the mushroom is such a beautiful symbol, along with the sun, because obviously the sun is the reason to celebrate. It's the idea that this is the hardest night of the year. We're going to come together, get everyone we love together, get through it. But you could see some version of almost numbing yourself through it or celebrating it harder. Around the world, there's some kind of either psychedelic or alcoholic or fermented plant medicine that people use as a celebration. And the mushroom itself is this beautiful symbol of nature's connection. So we can use it as we're metaphorically feel more connected to each other. That's generally the experience that people describe when they do something like mushroom. Their senses are more alive, more color, more understanding of a familiarity, and seeing the world differently. What it does in the whole ecosystem is it's this bridger of life and death. You know, fungus and mold starts growing on your food when it's decaying because it's bringing the dead things to life. It's turning the dead things into something else so that it can be eaten by other things and come in a different form. They get their energy from decaying matter, whereas plants and humans and animals get their energy from the sun as well as food. There is no waste, but the mushrooms help bring it all back to life. And if you look back far enough, there are these fossils of the mushroom that are the oldest fossils we have of anything else. And basically the mushrooms used to be really large things, larger than the trees. They're older than our oldest trees. and they eventually went underground while everything else died out and the dinosaurs died out. They went underground and became this underground network, and they connect the trees with one another. They both send signals and nutrients from one tree to another, and you see sick trees getting sent nutrients, you see baby trees, you see signals being sent if there's an infestation. And there's this whole single DNA of these underground networks, and we're learning this today with science, and there's people that care enough about it to really dig in and find this and have these very tedious studies to understand this underground web that is underneath our feet. And so this mushroom is something that gets us to look deeper at what's underneath our feet and say, there's more going on here. There's more going on to the story. And it also says, okay, well, to me, let's look into the origins of why we're doing things and maybe give credit to these lost civilizations that we could say we as a Christian society have been sending missionaries out to really destroy who they were. We're trying to transform them into more of the same. But when you get to these cultures that are so hard to reach and hard to get to, they weren't ever able to really be brought into this single religious background. So they're still practicing this in the Siberian lands in different places. And so these places where you see traditional cultures that haven't been missionized into the Christian narrative, they still have these connections to the winter solstice, to the sun. And it's amazing to see that we still have that as well. And so that's kind of the natural part of the story. It's to say why we have Santa and presents under the tree. But to tell the story of Christmas, we still have to talk about the namesake. So you can't deny that the word Christmas has the word Christ in it.